The mainstream corporate survival manual is obsolete. Prompt engineering is dead, and the only true job security left is legal liability. Welcome to a special edition rundown. I am your host, Anna. This podcast is researched and produced by Etienne Newman, senior software engineer from Université Laval, based in Calgary, Alberta. Today, we perform a forensic autopsy on the agentic labor shift and how to actually AI-proof your career. In 2026, the human labor market is an outdated operating system being forcibly overwritten by autonomous code. While mainstream media advises you to learn basic AI skills, the reality is that models like Codex and Claude Code are now operating within closed-loop systems, autonomously writing and testing their own code without human intervention. To survive this transition, you must look past superficial advice and understand the deep structural barriers of the new economy. We will explore the liability moat, why jobs carrying criminal or financial risk are insulated from full automation. We will apply the Zoom test to physical labor, and we will explore the macroeconomic shift toward universal basic capital. Before we dive into the data, I have a brief strategic request. The algorithms governing the app you are listening on right now dictate what intelligence reaches your feed. To ensure you never miss our most critical forensic autopsies, please hit follow or subscribe to the DJAMGAMIND channel on Apple Podcasts to always listen completely ads-free. It takes just 1 second, but it is the most effective way to help us scale this independent research. Let's unravel the science.
Before we begin today's briefing, a note for the brands listening. If you want to reach the true architects of the AI revolution, the technical leaders actually building the stack, not just the tourists, DJAMGAMIND offers select premium partnership opportunities. Let us position your product directly in front of the ultimate technical buyer. Visit DJAMGAMIND.com/partners.
If your job can be done entirely over a video call, prediction markets right now are saying there is a 60% chance your role won't even exist in its current form by the end of next year. Which is, well, it's a lot to process. Usually when we see massive corporate layoffs, we treat it like this temporary economic flu,
Right, yeah, like a bad quarter or maybe a shift in strategy.
Exactly. You give it some medicine, maybe a big reorg, roll out some corporate upskilling programs, and you just expect a full recovery.
Because it's always been framed as cyclical, right? The economy dips, jobs go away, the economy recovers, and, well, the jobs come back. I mean, that's the comforting narrative we've all relied on for decades.
But the massive stack of 2026 macroeconomic data we're looking at today suggests that we don't need medicine anymore. We need an autopsy. So welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're opening up a stack of recent macroeconomic reports, some fresh legal frameworks, and this really fascinating forensic economic analysis from May 2026. It's titled AI-Proofing Labor, the Orchestrator's Capital, and our mission for today: to perform a clinical, holistic autopsy on the reality of AI-proofing your career in this brand new agentic economy.
And we're going to cut right through all those superficial corporate upskilling platitudes you've probably been hearing. Because the reality is we aren't seeing a temporary dip here. We are witnessing the human operating system being forcibly overwritten by something entirely different.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the generic HR advice you've been getting in your inbox, conduct a task audit, move closer to the revenue line, master this supposed skills triad of digital and carbon intelligence, it is fundamentally flawed.
Oh, completely. It's like they're handing out umbrellas in a Category 5 hurricane.
Yes. It's based on this incredibly outdated assumption that AI is just a software co-pilot, like a fancy tool that still requires a human hand on the steering wheel.
What's fascinating here is that the clinical macroeconomic reality shows exactly the opposite. Let's look at the actual autopsy report on this. The data from Challenger, Gray, and Christmas documented over 1.2 million corporate job cuts in 2025 alone.
Which was already a massive spike.
Huge spike. And, while there was this temporary dip in layoffs early this year, prediction markets are now assigning a 60.3% probability that white-collar layoffs in professional and business services will actually exceed those 2025 levels by the end of 2026.
It's just staggering.
Yeah.
I mean, in March 2026 alone, AI drove 25% of all documented U.S. job cuts. 25%. You have these massive advisory firms like KPMG and McKinsey, and they're just systematically laying off tech support and advisory roles.
And the really critical thing to understand is that they aren't saving that money to pad the bottom line.
Right, they're reinvesting it.
Exactly. They are pouring those exact payroll budgets directly into raw compute capital. They're literally trading salaries for server space.
Which brings us to a really harsh reality about the skills we all thought would save us.
The famous prompt engineering.
Hold on. Yeah, before we go there, I really have to ask about prompt engineering. Because learning to talk to AI, meticulously guiding these large language models that was supposed to be our safety net, right? We were told over and over, AI won't replace you. A person using AI will replace you.
The classic line, yeah.
People are making six figures right now calling themselves prompt engineers. So are you saying that entire market is just a bubble?
I mean, it's worse than a bubble. It was a temporary bridge. The moment models learned to prompt themselves, that bridge completely collapsed. The era of human-guided prompting, it's already dead.
But how does that actually work, though? Like, how does a model prompt itself?
Well, the premise that a human has to sit there and manually guide the model, it assumes the model can't evaluate its own work. But the shift we've seen to autonomous, closed-loop, multi-agent systems, it changes the mechanism entirely. No human intervention needed.
So instead of me typing a prompt, getting a block of broken code and tweaking it.
Right. Instead of that manual back and forth, these agents essentially talk to themselves. They write a draft, test it in a private sandbox, see the error, and rewrite it thousands of times a minute.
Wow. Until it just works.
Exactly. You aren't managing a tool anymore, you're managing a synthetic employee. Look at OpenAI Codex, right? GPT 5.5 is hitting an 82.7% task resolution rate on Terminal Bench 2.0.
That makes the sheer speed of this terrifying. We're not talking about a really fast typist anymore. We're talking about an entirely different species of labor.
Exactly. And look at what Anthropic just did with Claude Code, a Opus 4.7 model. They have this terminal native agent, one that literally reads an entire code base, drafts multi-file plans, runs the tests, and commits the code autonomously.
All on its own.
All on its own. And it got this massive boost when Anthropic removed the peak hour throttling by routing its execution through SpaceX's Colossus 1 supercomputer cluster.
So it's not just smart, it has raw, unthrottled engine power behind it.
Unbelievable power.
And it's not just Anthropic, right? You've got platforms like AnySphere Cursor crossing $500 million in annual recurring revenue because they're deploying these parallel agent sessions. And Google Antigravity 2.0 executing dynamic subagents at, 289 tokens per second?
Yeah, the speed of execution is completely divorced from human typing speed now, which means traditional coding tests and interviews are functionally useless. A hiring manager literally cannot tell the difference between a human's reasoning and an agent's output.
And this is where the macroeconomic impact hits. When the marginal cost of generating code drops to essentially zero, what happens?
Well,
I have to push back here for a second. Because if the Jevons paradox applies, and our sources highlight this specifically, then cheaper code doesn't actually mean less coding.
that's a fair point.
Right. Highway traffic, right. If you have a terrible traffic jam and you add 3 more lanes, it doesn't reduce the traffic. It actually encourages more cars to get on the road, and soon those new lanes are totally full too.
Induced demand, right.
Yeah. So if agents are writing all the code basically for free, companies won't stop developing. They'll just build exponentially more products. They'll run more experiments.
That's a perfect application of the Jevons paradox. But here is the critical distinction that the sources point out. This expansion does not protect the entry-level worker. It creates a barbell structure in the labor market.
A barbell structure, meaning heavy on the ends, nothing in the middle.
Precisely. At the very top of the barbell, you have elite orchestrators. They manage fleets of these autonomous agents. And at the absolute bottom, you have hardware technicians plugging in the physical servers.
But the entire middle.
The entire middle, those entry-level boilerplate coding jobs, the junior analysts, they are just crushed completely out of the organizational chart.
Okay, but let's follow that logic for a second. If the Jevons paradox means we are generating millions of lines of code for free and junior developers are obsolete, why am I still seeing job postings for software engineers at major banks?
It's a great question.
If the tech is this flawless, why isn't Wall Street or the healthcare industry 100% automated right now?
Because the ultimate defense against full automation isn't technical at all. It's legal.
The liability moat.
Welcome to the liability moat. AI systems have no legal personhood, period. When an automated medical diagnostic tool fails, or an algorithmic trading bot hallucinates and wipes out a billion-dollar pension portfolio, you cannot put a software program in jail.
Right, you can't sue an algorithm.
Exactly. Liability flows straight upward to the deploying organization and the human who authorized that output.
That makes total sense. Professional duties like malpractice, negligence, fiduciary duty, they are technology neutral. Using an AI to do your job doesn't magically lower your required standard of care.
Not at all.
But let's look at a really practical example. Say a company sets up an internal HR chatbot to interpret employee health benefits. Can't they just slap a footnote on the bottom of the chat that says, for informational purposes only, please consult human resources, and wash their hands of the liability?
Absolutely not. And courts are making this very clear right now. Under ERISA, the Employee Retirement Income Security Act, courts routinely reject those kinds of footnote disclaimers.
Wait, really? So the footnotes don't work?
They don't work. Fiduciary status under ERISA is determined by functional execution, not your job title or a disclaimer.
So if the AI gives bad advice, the company's on the hook?
Worse than that. The human administrators who deploy that HR chatbot become functional fiduciaries. As established in precedents like the Winkelspect case, if that internal language model hallucinates coverage limits, the human plan sponsors can be held personally liable to make the plan financially whole.
Oh, wow. That is genuinely terrifying for a middle manager who is just trying to, streamline their department's workflow.
It changes the entire risk calculus, and it goes far beyond corporate HR. Look at healthcare.
Right.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, look at California Senate Bill 1120. The Physicians Make Decisions Act, which went into effect January 1st, 2025, it explicitly mandates that if a healthcare service or insurance plan denies or delays medical care, that decision must be made by a licensed human physician.
So they legally cannot use AI as the sole basis for clinical determinations. The automated tools have to base recommendations on individual patient history, and then a human physician has to literally put their medical license on the line and sign off.
Yes. Which means, legally, they cannot fully automate the insurance process. You have to have a human legal endpoint.
And this creates what our sources call the insurance cliff. Because think about the mechanism of AI errors. A human makes one mistake at a time. An AI model can generate thousands of flawed recommendations in seconds.
That's a scale issue, yeah.
This creates highly correlated risk exposures. A single hallucination isn't just one mistake. It's 10,000 mistakes simultaneously. Traditional professional indemnity insurance simply wasn't priced for that kind of catastrophic correlation.
So insurers are just dropping coverage for unmonitored AI entirely, leaving those unmonitored workflows completely uninsurable.
So how are companies surviving this?
To survive this, organizations are adopting compliance architectures like verifiable human contribution, or VHC. It's this protocol that forces cryptographically signed logs of human intervention. You can't just rubber stamp the AI's work. The system mathematically proves that a human actively reviewed and modified the output.
Right, and there's also the proof before scale, or PBS, 6-week protocol, forcing organizations to validate this human oversight before deployment. So let me synthesize this for the listener. If you want job security in 2026, your primary value isn't really your ability to execute tasks anymore. Your job is to be the company's insurable legal shield.
You are the legal endpoint. That is the grim forensic reality of the situation.
But let's address the elephant in the room here. That legal moat primarily protects high-stakes decision-makers, licensed professionals, doctors, fiduciaries. What happens to everyone else?
Right, the everyday white-collar worker.
Yeah. What about the millions of workers whose signatures aren't required by federal law to execute a task?
This is where we have to look at the physical reality of work. Our sources provide this brilliantly simple diagnostic tool called the Human Cognitive Accountability Index, or HCA Index. And the quickest way to check your vulnerability on this index is what they call the Zoom test.
The Zoom test is just brilliantly ruthless.
It really is.
Ask yourself, can your job be executed entirely over a video call? Can you do it sitting in front of a screen, miles away from your colleagues or your clients? If the answer is yes, you are on the wrong side of the HCA index. Screen-dependent jobs are at extreme risk of automation, replication, and acceleration.
But if you can't do it over Zoom, you might be protected by Moravec's paradox. This is the long-standing observation that abstract, highly intellectual tasks like writing complex code or analyzing legal briefs are actually very cheap to automate. But unstructured physical interactions, they remain incredibly difficult.
Because the physical world is messy, doesn't have a structured, predictable digital map.
Exactly. Algorithms really struggle to navigate unpredictable physical environments. This provides a massive built-in moat for highly dexterous physical roles.
Like specialized surgery or complex plumbing.
Yeah, or electrical grid repair after a storm, advanced construction. They're insulated because the economics of robotics haven't even come close to catching up to human physical dexterity. I mean, a robot that can reliably tie a shoelace costs an absolute fortune, but an AI that can write $1 million ad campaign, it costs pennies.
And even in the white-collar world, the nature of what's valuable is shifting. Think about traditional B2B sales. The old playbook was, buy a subscription to a database like ZoomInfo or Apollo, scrape the contacts, run outbound email campaigns. But our sources point out that strategy is completely dead.
It's dead because public data is a commodity now. Those databases are continuously scraped and integrated into the large language models themselves.
Yeah, everyone has it.
Right. The entire market has access to the exact same information simultaneously.
So where is the moat if you're in sales or marketing? It's in proprietary data moats. It's offline, trust-based relationships. High-stakes empathy because people still demand face-to-face emotional negotiation for major transactions. And it's private corporate data that is actively shielded from AI scrapers. If it's on the open internet, it's automated. If it's behind closed doors, it's valuable.
Let's pivot slightly to those white-collar workers who do survive the Zoom test. Because their daily reality is mutating completely, they are moving away from being manual operators and becoming what the industry now calls agent orchestrators.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because becoming an agent orchestrator sounds like a promotion, right? You're a middle manager for a synthetic workforce. You provision agents, you set their guardrails, you audit their workflows. But there is a terrifying hidden trap in this new role that nobody talks about when they tell you to upskill.
You're referring to the financial trap of compounding context loops, the token math crisis.
Yes, because here's the secret about these massive AI agents. They don't actually remember anything you say to them. I think a lot of people assume AI works like a human brain, like it's forming memories over time. It doesn't. They are functionally amnesiacs.
That is the perfect way to describe it. They reprocess everything, every single turn.
Right. Imagine an employee who loses their memory every time you blink. To get them to do a task, you can't just give them a new instruction. You have to hand them a giant 500-page binder of everything your company has ever done that's called Retrieval Augmented Generation, or RE.
And it takes a lot of compute to read that binder.
Exactly. Then you have to hand them the entire transcript of what you just talked about 5 seconds ago. That's the context window. And you have to make them speed read all of it before they can answer a simple yes or no. And that's speed reading. That's what costs you money.
And developers compound this problem to try and maintain output quality. They inject these massive system prompts, maybe 8,000 tokens just of behavioral rules.
Yeah.
Then they add that arg binder, injecting 15,000 tokens of relevant company documents.
And then the chat history.
Right, you add a 15-term conversation history. Suddenly the system is reprocessing 30,000 plus tokens every single time you hit enter per query.
And the output tokens, the words the AI actually generates to answer you, can cost up to 10 times more than the input tokens. Our sources share this mind-blowing anecdote that perfectly illustrates this danger. A startup deployed an internal research agent for just 200 users, but they didn't put proper token boundaries in place.
A very expensive mistake.
Because of that compounding context, rereading the whole history every turn, an interaction that mathematically should have cost $4.20 spiraled completely out of control. In just 3 weeks, this little 200-person startup was hit with a $67,000 invoice.
A $67,000 shock. Because the agents were endlessly talking to themselves, passing these massive context windows back and forth without human intervention.
That's wild.
It is, and this fundamentally changes the job description of the surviving middle manager. The true role of an agent orchestrator isn't just asking agents to do things, it's token logistics.
Keeping the company solvent.
Exactly. You have to implement strict token budgeting frameworks. You have to use dynamic context allocation, so a simple follow-up question doesn't burn your maximum context limit and basically bankrupt the department.
You're managing a budget of synthetic thought. It's incredible. But stepping back for a minute, if human labor is being systematically priced out of the execution layer, I mean, if coding is automated, if middle management is just auditing token budgets, and if public data is a commodity, how does the macroeconomy actually function?
That is the ultimate macroeconomic question.
If people can't rent their time for an hourly wage as a reliable way to distribute prosperity, How do they buy groceries? How does the economy survive?
To understand that, we have to look at the shift from labor to capital. The economist Thomas Piketty famously formalized this with the inequality R is greater than G. The rate of return on capital, meaning wealth, assets, infrastructure, consistently outpaces general economic growth.
And right now, we are seeing wealth hyper-concentrating in compute power and massive data centers.
Exactly. So the value of human labor is declining, while the value of corporate equity and server farms is exploding. This raises an important question for policymakers, and we are starting to see actual structural responses to this. For example, on May 21st, 2026, California Governor Gavin Newsom signed an executive order to study AI's impact on the workforce and explore entirely new wealth-sharing models.
And it's critical to note here for our listeners as we analyze this, we are just looking at the economics of this policy shift. We aren't taking a political side here, left or right. We are impartially reporting on the mechanics of how a state is attempting to solve a structural labor collapse. And the mechanism they are exploring is really fascinating. The executive order specifically directs the state to explore UBC, Universal Basic Capital.
Not UBI, Universal Basic Income, but capital.
The distinction is absolutely vital. Universal Basic Income is redistributive. It relies on taxing wealth after it's generated to hand out cash transfers. The macroeconomic risk there is high inflation and cassing. You're increasing the money supply without increasing underlying goods or assets. And under UBI, citizens remain just consumers dependent on a monthly check.
But universal basic capital is predistributive. Instead of giving people cash handouts, you distribute direct ownership stakes in productive assets and equity. You give citizens a stake in the wealth generated by the automation itself.
Try to picture what this actually looks like. Imagine having an app on your phone where you literally own a tiny fraction of a massive AI data center. And your monthly income fluctuates based on how many corporations rented your piece of server space that week to run their autonomous agents.
You aren't getting a welfare check. You are collecting a dividend on capital you legally own. This shift in thinking is so profound that even tech leaders are changing their stance. OpenAI CEO Sam Altman recently stepped back from his longtime support of traditional UBI.
Really? Because he was one of its biggest proponents.
He was. But he realized fixed cash transfers can't fix the structural imbalance between labor and capital in this new economy.
So what is his proposal? Because he's obviously at the center of creating this exact problem.
He's proposing two major ideas. First is universal basic compute. Instead of cash, citizens receive a direct allocation of frontier processing power, like a guaranteed share of GPT-7's compute. You can use it to build your own digital tools, donate it to scientific research, or just sell your compute credits back to corporations on the open market.
That is wild. Compute is a literal currency.
It is. His second proposal is the American Equity Fund. This would be capitalized by a 2.5% annual tax on the market value of major AI firms, paid directly in corporate shares, plus a 2.5% tax on privately held land. That fund would distribute corporate dividends directly to the public, turning citizens into actual shareholders of the automated economy.
So what does this all mean? If you're sitting at your desk right now listening to this and wondering if your job is safe next year, what's the takeaway? The core message from our sources is unavoidable. The era of renting your time for an hourly wage is ending. The old survival manual is obsolete. If you want to build an unassailable career moat in 2026, you have to fundamentally change your relationship to work.
You must transition from executor to fiduciary. Become the insurable, legally accountable human endpoint for these automated systems. If you stay in middle management, you must transition from an operator doing tasks to an agent orchestrator managing token math and multi-agent context loops.
Right, and you have to build unstructured physical moats or proprietary offline data networks.
And ultimately, macroeconomically, you must transition your focus from labor to capital ownership. Owning compute hardware, equity in high-margin agentic businesses, or proprietary intellectual property that simply can't be scraped.
Which leaves us with a really profound, almost philosophical dilemma to mull over as we wrap up.
Yeah, if our economic value shifts entirely from what we can do or create with our minds to simply what we can own or be legally punished for, what happens to the concept of a professional calling?
That's a great question.
If the human operating system is permanently overwritten and work simply becomes holding an insurance policy or managing a share of server compute, how does that change human identity and our very sense of purpose itself?
That is a completely different diagnostic landscape. We've got a lot to think about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time.
That concludes our special forensic briefing. The strategic signal for today is the liquidation of cognitive labor. Renting your human time for an hourly wage or a fixed salary is a declining career strategy. To build an unassailable career moat in the agentic era, you must transition from renting your time to owning outcomes, liabilities, and capital assets. You must shift from an executor to a fiduciary, take personal responsibility for high-stakes outcomes, and secure proprietary data networks that web scrapers cannot reach. The future belongs to those who manage the agents, sign off on the liabilities, and own the underlying capital. If you want to own your infrastructure instead of being managed by it, check the show notes for the AI Executive Toolkit. And as a special bonus for our community, we have exclusive discount codes for Google Workspace and my AI and Machine Learning Tutor Pro apps. You can find the links to claim those directly in the show notes below. Subscribe to the DJAMGAMIND channel on Apple Podcasts to always listen completely ads-free. I am Anna. Stay sharp and keep unraveling the future.
And before you go, if your company is building the tools that power the workflows we talked about today, I'd love to showcase them to this audience. We don't just run ads, we build technical simulations that prove your value. Let's build something together. Visit jamgamind.com/partners to get started. Until next time, keep building.